Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Baker, and we're going to continue delving into and talking about feeding the global community and how we use land to do that. So, in the fourth session on our unit here, we're going to talk about the impacts of animal husbandry on the environment. Animal husbandry is the growing of and caring for animals for the purposes of food and for labor. We're mainly going to be talking about food today, though, because that's kind of the breadth of our unit here. All right, so historically, domesticated animals date back a long time with going over 10,000 years ago. And we have domesticated about 70 species for either livestock purposes, which is food and labor, or for companionship, or pets, all right? And in some communities, these are a one and the same category. But we're going to remember that purposely for what we're talking about, there are about 14 species of domesticated animals that are primarily grown for their meat, for food. All right. We'll talk more about that specifically later this week. All right. So in general, the domestication of animals has been to help with subsistence farming, growing enough food to feed the family or the local community of the farm. Right? And they're used as a source of labor, like in this picture of plowing, or for food, or they are used for a source of fuel, with animal excrement being used to create fires, to burn, to cook food, or whatever is needed in the community. Right? So remember, historic practices, mainly subsistence farming, but it's for food, fuel, and labor. Right? Modern, we're going to see them used in two different ways, in intensive farming and extensive farming. Intensive farming, the main goal here is to get as much product out as possible. So animals are usually grazing in smaller areas, or they're being fed in troughs. They are not used for labor because intensive farming relies on technology, machines, to do that. Intensive farming is also going to harvest that animal waste, and it could be sold separately as fertilizer or manure. While extensive farming, we're going to see a continuous grazing of the roaming animals. Mainly, we're talking about ruminant animals for both of these, by the way. Ruminant animals are ones that have multi-chambered stomachs. So cows have 4 chambers. They are a ruminant animal, right? So they are continually grazing and roaming a larger field or pasture. These animals may be used for labor, and their waste can be used for fuel. So remember, intensive is the opposite of extensive. Intensive, the goal is as much product as possible. Extensive is usually growing enough food to feed a local family or a local community, and does not have as much actual work being put into getting as much product out as possible. Instead, they are more focused on a way of life or quality in the animals. Right. The livestock impact is great. As humans, we use about 20 to 30% of our fresh water for feeding and raising and caring for livestock. They eat about 40% of the global crops. So about 25% of fresh water is used to take care of animals, and 40% of crops are used to feed those animals. They take up as much of a third of the habitable land, and so we're seeing a lot of capital going into this market for livestock. All right, and that requires a lot of labor. It requires a lot of resources. On the other end of the spectrum, they are giving off a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, especially carbon dioxide and methane. All right, ruminant meat, that's those animals that have multi-chambered stomachs and process their food a little bit slower. They are giving off 62 grams of carbon dioxide per gram of protein, give or take. Whereas if we look at other types of protein consumption with recirculating aquaculture and fisheries, all the way down to pork and poultry, giving much less carbon dioxide per gram of protein. So they are cleaner. Those air quotes are important because, yeah, they still have a lot of other problems. They just might be a better solution than cows or oxen or bison or buffalo, all right? But livestock have a large draw on the global amount of fresh water and the global amount of crops. So we're seeing a lot of issues with needing extra capital to keep that afloat, all right? And at least locally in the US, beef prices are continuing to rise due to some stuff that happened 5 to 10 years ago, and it's still having an impact on our local economies. As always, keep asking questions and keep learning. Have a good one.